Hey, it's Efruz. I'm back. The lighting's a little different because it's dark outside, but I'm still back to talk about the rest of the stuff that's happened in Computex. Now, I got to page 22 in my former video, and as you can see, the end of this thread is currently at page 32. So it should be a little over 50% shorter, assuming the picture density is about the same. Given that there are also probably more comments now that this has more exposure, not thanks to me, but now that this thread has more exposure, it could possibly be over 60% shorter than the last video. So hopefully it's more watchable. This is the last thing I covered. It was Gigabyte's G1 gaming motherboard. I'm going to move on from there into the first topic of this video, which is AMD's Fiji GPU. This is the GPU. Relative to this person's hands, the GPU is rather large. That's just the GPU in the HBM, or the high bandwidth memory right here. And then this is the GPU, or where the CPU would be. I don't know why this says CPU GPU actually, because we knew that the Fiji graphics cards were going to have high bandwidth stacked memory, but they were called GPUs. So unless this is a hint that AMD's APUs are going to have stacked memory, or if AMD's CPUs are going to have stacked cache, which doesn't make a lot of sense in terms of logical deduction of what this could imply, then that means that AMD is actually giving us more information on what kind of hardware they're going to be releasing in the future, which is interesting. Let's click this link. 70 by 70 millimeters based on the information presented during our HBM technical session. So I think that's actually, it's about a bit as big as like LGA 2011-3 CPUs. I think that's a good scale. So this is what's supposed to be in the 390X. I don't remember if they ever announced the 390, but I do know they announced the 360, 370, and 380, which are just rebrands of the R7 260, and R9 270X and 280X respectively. Here's pictures of the GTX 980 Ti AMP edition. This is the AMP Extreme edition. This is a dual slot. This is a triple slot. This one has a beefier cooler. I already talked about this one, but this is basically a 980 Ti with the same cooler as the 970 AMP Extreme Core edition. Passively cooled PC, Intel Core M, 4 to 6 watt TDP, 8 gigs of DDR3 memory. So this is the kind of stuff that's like, again, another word processing style mini PC that you can mount on the back of monitors so it doesn't take up a lot of space in a school or an office or something like that. Oddly enough, even though I always have ideas about mini PCs being in schools, I never see them in schools. I always see slim MATX or slim MITX cases in schools. I don't know what's in most of the hardware internally aside from Intel i3 processors for the most part. So I'm not sure why the mini PCs have not made a lot of traction in a lot of schools. But hopefully we see them more, because this would mean that the density of workers in an office can increase, especially when they're doing stuff that's small like word processing. More info on Gigabyte's 100 series motherboards, which is their LGA 1151 motherboard series, hints at DirectX 12 multi-GPU capabilities. Now, the news that I remember from DirectX 12 is that there were rumors that VRAM in GPUs was going to be able to stack with DirectX 12. So going through this article, the hint at DirectX 12's GPU capabilities is actually explicit asynchronous multi-GPU capabilities, which would imply actually that when you look at this article, you can read this header and understand what I'm talking about, but I'm not going to cover that whole article. Logically, having an AMD and an NVIDIA GPU running or managing specific aspects of a game seems like a more efficient route than SLI or Crossfire, just because there are certain things that AMD and NVIDIA graphics cards run better, I guess is the best way I can put it. Game devs use a lot of different softwares to help develop a game faster, and sometimes those softwares can be friendlier to certain graphics cards. And what this also means is that the idea of stuff, NVIDIA or AMD exclusive stuff like Hairworks, and I forget what AMD's thing was called that the new Tomb Raider is supposed to have support for. But that would cancel out any problems with PCs becoming consoles, in the sense of NVIDIA and AMD are competing for optimization exclusivity the same way that consoles fight for exclusive titles. I wonder how benchmarks would work. Because I feel like in terms of the scientific method behind benchmarking, I have a feeling that AMD benchmarks and NVIDIA benchmarks may end up having, say, if you're going to benchmark an NVIDIA card, you're going to have a 390X in every machine, so there are no bottlenecks, so you know the NVIDIA graphics card's raw performance, and vice versa for any AMD benchmarks, where you'll probably have a Titan Z, not Titan Z, that's a dual card, a 980 Ti or a Titan X in a setup, so that there's no bottlenecks in that aspect. Now, funnily enough, if the 980 Ti stays the most powerful card through the 390X's release, that would imply that AMD benchmarks are going to be easier to do than NVIDIA benchmarks, especially on high-end graphics cards. I wonder if this is one of Noctua's fans. Slim 120 and 140 millimeter fans. They're 15 millimeters. Most fans are normally 25. Anti-vibration frame. I'm not sure whether Noctua fans would be much quieter with an anti-vibration frame, just understanding how quiet Noctua fans are to begin with. I have a feeling that the price that you'll have to pay for these fans is not going to be worth the amount of additional silence you get. You would get more value out of a silent case. Seems like Noctua is releasing more low-profile coolers. They actually released two not too long ago. I think in late 2014 they released two. One that was a low-profile cooler that was top airflow, and another with two heat sinks and a fan in the middle. And that had a 92 millimeter fan, while the low-profile cooler used a 120 millimeter fan, I believe. So it's actually surprising that Noctua is coming out with more products. But if you think about it, if you go on Noctua's website and you go to like websites of any other company that makes CPU coolers, Noctua has a lot of products. So this may not be as surprising as it seems. 200 millimeter A series fan. 200 millimeter fans are already quiet. Not individually compared to 120 or 140 millimeter fans. Actually, no, same CFM, cubic feet of airflow per minute. The 200 millimeter fans will usually make less noise than the 120, 140s. This fan in particular, I could have ideas of putting in an H630, because an H630 supports two front 200 millimeter fans and two top 200 millimeter fans. So having four of these in your system, knowing the amount of airflow Noctua fans provide relative to other silent fans, would be a massive amount of cooling in a case. Noctua has a PWM fan controller. That's funny, to be honest, that it only has one fan input. But I guess that's not a big deal, because you can still probably split multiple Noctua PWM fan controllers. So this would be a really good way to control whether your case has positive or negative air pressure to your liking, as opposed to looking for fans that have high airflow for front intake and less airflow for exhaust. Project Chromax. It seems like ever since Razer released the Chroma line, everyone wants to be Chroma as opposed to creating any kind of name in relation to a spectrum of colors. There's red, green, yellow, blue here. They don't seem to show any more colors, but I wouldn't be surprised if this also came out in orange and white and black, because these fans normally come with brown, a dark wood color type of grommet. Like, see, this is the color of the normal grommets that come with these specific Noctua fans. I'm kind of scared for the fact that all these stick up, just because I feel like cable management could cause you to break this connector board if you don't insert it last. But at the same time, you could probably, looking at these mounting holes, it seems like you could probably like drill holes the size of this circuit board and mount it wherever you want. It would be a very, very basic mod. Noctua has 80 and 92 millimeter industrial PPC fans. They're 120 and 140 millimeter versions of these fans are very highly rated, but at the same time, they're very expensive. So I'm not sure what market this would appeal to because they're smaller, so they're going to be louder, but they're also so expensive that it makes you wonder whether the price that they're going to release these at is going to be worth it when thinking about Noctua's idea of creating silent hardware. And small fans, even going through Noctua's prestigious process of engineering silent fans, are still going to be fairly loud, I believe. I'm not expecting much out of these, and I would be phenomenally impressed by Noctua if they did something great in terms of making the first 80 and 92 millimeter fans that people actually consider silent. NHD15S, this looks like this is literally what the other cooler I was talking about looks like. That is low profile and has a 92 millimeter fan in between two heat sinks. Though compared to the RAM that's on the side, you can tell it's big. This is a 140 millimeter fan, I believe, and it doesn't look like you'll be able to mount fans on the sides. Cooler Master is popularizing beyond the water cooling community the ability to make your own water cooling loop. So here you can see pictures where there's a radiator and a pump and a custom CPU block and whatnot. So it seems like Cooler Master is giving people the opportunity to make their own water cooling loops. Now, I wonder if Cooler Master is going to be super helpful in terms of teaching people how to create water cooling loops so they don't destroy their PCs, because that's very dangerous. Water cooling involves a lot of understanding what you want to do with the water cooling loop, and knowing exactly what you're doing in terms of installation. So Cooler Master releasing a kit only makes it so much easier. In that decrease in difficulty is definitely finite. So what I assume Cooler Master wants to do is not necessarily make it easier to create water cooling loops, but to have more production in water cooling loops, because I feel that one reason why water cooling loops are so expensive right now is because the community is very small relative to the rest of the computer hardware community. So there's not as much mass production with liquid cooling stuff. But I don't know what Cooler Master exactly is going to do. Like, it's hard to see whether they're going to compete with what's going on right now, or bring the hardware community to a higher plane of understanding with water cooling, therefore increasing the size of the water cooling community, or whether they're trying to mass produce water cooling loop solutions for people so that this can become more of a norm with computers. Here you see a water cooling loop between what looks like a 360 millimeter radiator in the front of this master case and probably a 240 millimeter radiator on the top, cooling just the CPU. I can't imagine how ice cold that CPU is, but I would like to see Cooler Master, if they're going to do this, eventually make blocks for GPUs. Here's a pair of Cooler Master headphones. You can see on here it says Cooler Master Ergo Series. These look like very soft leather cups, which is nice. Seems like Cooler Master is just making a Master Series, which makes a lot of sense given their name. Here's a Master mouse. Slide sensor technology, interchangeable parts. So they don't have a lot of info, but they have a lot of conceptualization. But chances are they are going to release products. And it looks like there's some modularity here with how you want the sides to be shaped. Now, I really like the way this Master Airmaker cooler looks. If you've ever seen a Cooler Master air cooler before, that isn't like a basic heatsink with a fan, so stuff like the V8 GTS, they do a really good job with the aesthetic of their coolers. The only company I can think of that comes close is Be Quiet. This is one of the best looking ones just off of this picture, in my opinion. I've always liked the armored look on top of a fan as opposed to just it being just the fan, because it makes it look like a more uniform thing and less like people are jerry-rigging fans onto heatsinks, because that's one turnoff I've always had with air cooling, is that it looks like you're trying to build it looks like you bent a piece of metal to try and find a way to install a fan on a cooler, and even then the fan doesn't sit flush on the cooler or look like it's specifically designed to push air through the heatsink that it's on. The only company I can think of that actually does that is Arctic Cooling. My father actually uses one of those coolers. But I've always liked this design. I've always liked the uniform looking heat sinks, especially from the top. This would look incredibly nice. Has 140mm fans. So chances are it's going to be 160, 155 plus millimeters. 1500 watt power supply. That's honestly not even necessary anymore. You could quad SLI the highest end NVIDIA GPUs and not even come close to 1500. Like, you'd have tons of headroom. Probably so much headroom that you wouldn't be able to fill any case in the modern day with it unless you had like a custom motor for some cooling solution that you have going on. Though I can say these power supplies look nice. I like power supplies that are straight black because it makes it easier to match. Like Corsair's power supplies are incredibly annoying to try and match stuff with unless you just have a shroud over it so you don't see it. ASUS has some more small PCs. This chassis and this chassis looks like their chassis that they put alongside their pre-built gaming PC, but smaller. Because this doesn't look like it would support like a 980 and an i7 in it without thermal throttling. Here's more pictures of the PA329Q that I was talking about yesterday. Obviously, pictures are a very bad example. Monitors are all about how they look in person because effects, lighting, and things that the camera can see that the human eye doesn't can influence the appearance. Like this color shifting is probably not visible, and if it is, who would buy this monitor? Like that. I wish I could see what this looks like in person. This illuminated ROG logo is nice though. Oh, that's cool. A display that shows the ROG logo on your table. I wonder if it'd be able to show on glass. Xigmatek has some cases, it appears. I've been somewhat of a fan of Xigmatek's aesthetic, but internally they just don't have the features, even for the price that they're selling some of these cases at, super low prices, to be worth buying. So I wonder if this is a silent case with a different kind of ventilation system compared to a lot of other silent cases on the top. To be honest, looking at this, it already doesn't look like the most feature-rich case in the world. It's same old Xigmatek in terms of their hard drive cage configuration. I really hope case manufacturers in the future have more convenient solutions because some of the stuff that's coming out is insane in terms of where you can mount hard drives just everywhere that isn't where they've always been since before 2015, which is these two cages right here. Is this supposed to be a 5 1/4 inch bay? Because it's like half as long, or looks like that at least. I'm not impressed, to be honest. Like, these look like typical Xigmatek cases that aren't anything special. This is cool. Knowing what kind of case the Nebula C is, releasing it in other colors would be a good idea. Also, thank you for getting rid of that orange accent on the bottom, on the front bottom left of your cases, because that made it impossible to like have it, because this is obviously supposed to be a computer that's on your desk, not under your desk. So basically, if you're super obsessive with color matching, you basically denied everybody that opportunity. I feel like Xigmatek is like ZOTAC was with GPUs back in the early 2010, 2011, 2012, where they are in a position where if they make something amazing, they will skyrocket in popularity. And I don't feel like Xigmatek is taking advantage of their opportunity. It looks like EVGA has a new case, a new air cooler, a new SLI bridge, new power supplies, and possibly a new motherboard. I don't know if this is already an EVGA motherboard that's already out. But it looks like they're making custom hybrid-cooled AIOs for GPUs. They're showing classified 980 Ti's here, I believe. Yeah. Kingpin. Hybrid. So This is how you can tell that a company hasn't chosen a name for their product yet, that they just call it gaming case. This looks like an in-between of the Thermaltake V series, the V31, the V71, and the Be Quiet Silent Base 800. That's what I'm seeing with this aesthetic. I really hope that it comes in more than just yellow, because no one makes anything that's yellow. And if you want to release something that's yellow, you have to release an entire product line that's yellow. Otherwise, people aren't going to buy it because they can't color match. EVGA does have motherboards that are coming out, but obviously for Skylake. So this is part of the tsunami of Skylake motherboards being shown off at Computex. Though, to be honest, EVGA's look by far the nicest. Like, even their mini ITX board. This is the coolest looking mini ITX board I've ever seen. Looks like they have titanium power supplies. I think they already released their P2s, and they already released their G2s for sure. So I wonder how much the T2s are going to cost, because if you look at their prices relative to the rest of the power supply market, there's pretty much always a sale or a mail-in rebate going on with EVGA's G1, B1, B2, G2, and P2 power supplies and GS power supplies. And despite the G1s and B1s not being as good as the G2s and B2s, due to the internal construction, they are really cheap compared to their competition. And their competition is basically Seasonic, XFX, and Corsair. And they're definitely cheaper than the three of those. So if their T2 ends up being cheaper, then EVGA essentially is holding the power supply market with an iron fist, if you ask me, with the exception of Corsair for having their Corsair Link software on their power supplies, their liquid coolers, and whatnot. EVGA definitely fixing their aesthetic issues with their mice since their first generation of peripherals. Is this a troll? What is this spacing? Here you can have 1.25 unit keycaps, but here you couldn't, because the 1 unit is right against. That is a very questionable design. I cannot imagine anyone enjoying that. I guess EVGA just hates keycaps and not using theirs. Liquid cooled RAM. If you thought the custom water loop was done, I wonder if Jay's 2 Senses will buy this and upgrade Skunkworks again just so he can have yellow liquid cooled RAM. This is actually a really good idea. I don't know why no one's thought of this yet. It's literally a comb that straightens out your cables so they look nicer in cases. Like, essentially, especially with PCI Express 6-pin and 8-pin connectors, you just put this comb on the back, and it's hardly visible, especially if you buy black ones, and it straightens your cables and makes them look neat and perfect. This might seem a little bit obsessive towards some people that don't care as much about cable management, but this is free money. RAIJINTEK is showing off 360mm Triton coolers, which is awesome. The big deal with the Triton coolers is that you can see any dies that you choose to put in their coolers. And I've heard that they will perform about as well as like most of the competition out there. So under that logic, I wonder if their 360mm coolers are going to perform better than what's out right now, which is pretty much only the Thermaltake Water 3 Ultimate, because the Kelvin X36 hasn't come out. Corsair hasn't made any 360mm coolers. Neither has Cooler Master or pretty much anyone else aside from Thermaltake and Fractal Design. So I wonder if their 360mm cooler is going to be super good. A company called EpicGear, which is owned by Giel, which I've heard that name before, I don't remember from where, is making gaming peripherals. Because everyone is making gaming peripherals now. Here they're showing mouse bungees, mice, and mechanical keyboards. Now the mouse bungee just looks like the Rockhat, I don't remember what it's called. But here's their mice, and here's their mechanical keyboard. The mice seem to do a better job maintaining a good aesthetic, but these look like RGB mice, which make no sense because they put a red accent on them, so whatever, and they put a black and red braided cable. Excellent design here. But these have black braided cables and are all white and black aside from their LEDs. So I like the design of these mice, not so much these. And these also look like they're very ergonomic mice. And I'm actually somewhat interested in them in terms of how they feel. EpicGear mechanical switches. Did they not get rights to Cherry, or is Cherry too expensive, or are they trying to cheap out, or what? So all these have the same actuation force and the same actuation points and the same travel. The only difference is that they have gray switches which are linear, orange switches which are tactile, and purple switches which are tactile and clicky. So they basically made their own red, brown, blue mechanical switch. Now I don't know who manufactures these, whether they're just made by EpicGear or if they're outsourcing from Kale, Greetech, Utomu, or Gateron. It'd be really awesome if they outsourced from Gateron, but I doubt it. Understanding where switches have gone, I doubt that switches specifically designed for mechanical gaming keyboards are going to make it beyond their brand. Razer was sounded very liberal about their Razer switches being used, but nothing has used them aside from the Black Widows. So I don't know where this could go. Here's a weight system for their mice. I actually like this weight system because it's just pulling the mouse down from the top, unlike, for example, the G502, M45, M65, because weighing the mouse from the bottom actually creates concern for damage being done to the bottom of the mouse. And what I mean by that is the systems that hold the weights getting damaged. Meanwhile, the whole mouse is holding the weights for these mice. So I prefer this design in terms of having a weighting system at all. I don't really get excited about headsets despite how cool this one looks in particular. Because the thing about headsets is that they are objectively less cost effective than headphones and a mic. And there really isn't a reason why they need to be, but that's just how the market has gone. You get a pair of headphones that's worth $20 and a mic that's worth $10, and they can sell it for $50 or more. I'm not sure how they get away with it, but they do. Well, they don't if you're an audio enthusiast. But there aren't a lot of headsets in the market that are even remotely good at either of their purposes, with the exception of Kingston for the HyperX Cloud being essentially the most cost-effective headset, but still not being as cost-effective as a pair of headphones with a standalone mic. Though I hope these sound good because they look like they have really comfortable ear cups that you could just wear forever, and they look nice. And looking nice and performing well are two things that you hardly ever see go together. Here's DDR4 laptop RAM, which I don't think I've actually seen any of. Not even like the G-Sync laptops have DDR4, but they're all even though they run on Broadwell. But I believe GDDR or DDR4 is for Skylake and 2011-3 right now. So I wonder if that means that they're going to be making any 2011-3 laptops, or whether this is just for Skylake laptops in the somewhat distant future. AVEXR Republic of Gamers RAM. So ASUS is outsourcing to AVEXR to make RAM, which essentially means that another company is eventually going to be able to have people make builds entirely off of their brand of stuff. Because ASUS already has ROG motherboards, they have ROG peripherals, ROG graphics cards. They're going to have ROG cases. Just another company that's starting to just make everything, which is still really cool because that just means that there's more saturation in the market, which means prices will go down. So that's always a benefit for me. Oh, that wasn't even a yellow cover. That was a gold cover. So they specifically are designing these. This blue one does not match this ASRock motherboard, but it should match like MSI's blue themed motherboards. Here's their GX900. I find it funny that Antec, a company that announced and released, quote, the GX300 over 6 months ago, like before CES, hasn't actually released the GX300 in North America, and they're announcing the GX, or they're showcasing a GX900 at Computex. Antec, we still exist. Come to America, please. Quickfire XTi pictures. RGB Quickfire XT. This will be the best mechanical keyboard available. Hopefully this isn't just an RB LED. Cherry mix blue, reds, browns, and key rollover. Full backlit, 35 colors, 5 settings. 35 colors is more than enough. I don't get this whole 16.8 million color crap. Like, find me a person that can identify more than 16. Also, note how the font is standard. So this is literally just perfect, provided it can go through the color spectrum, even if it's 35 colors. Lian Li showing off some more gamery aesthetic cases. You actually hardly ever see Lian Li do this. Oh man, an ASUS ROG case. According to the original poster, Computex is over. They're completely done with everything, aside from a few things here and there. What is this? This is a dual 290X card on one PCB. I was like, why are there 4 8-pin connectors? So this is essentially an air-cooled 295X2, because that's a dual, well, 295X2 shares VRAM, but I don't know if this will. This thing probably consumes like a power supply. So yeah, seems like Computex is over. In which case this may be my last video. At least about Computex. So, thank you for watching. I'll leave any feedback in the comments. And I'll see you in the next video I publish.